So there was this really cool band in the late 80s known as the Stone Roses. I really like them. I think the Stone Roses is a pretty legendary band. Their debut is often seen as one of the most influential albums of the 80s, beyond just being another album in the Manchester scene. This is an album that has managed to influence a lot of the music in the 90s, especially the Britpop scene in particular. I mean, hey, Liam Gallagher did say the self-title was one of his favorite albums, so yeah, there's a lot of connections to be had there. But as far as what's actually on their debut, I mean, I'm bringing it up right now because of two reasons. One, I really love this album. It's actually one of my favorite albums of all time, and one that I have listened to so much. Like, I think I pretty much know every song to heart. And I mean, looking at the songs themselves, I Am the Resurrection, I mean, just one of the greatest songs of all time. God was in the studio for that solo part towards the second half of that song. And I mean, beyond just that, you have I Wanna Be Adored, She Bangs the Drums, Made of Stone, Waterfall, This Is the One, Full Skull. That last one wasn't technically on the album originally. It was added later on, so it's kind of a bonus track of sorts, but it's amazing. It's one of the best bonus songs of all time, I will say so. Oh yeah, the second reason is because I want to talk about the follow-up. Let me put you in the picture, let me show you what I mean. So, let me ask you a question. Have you ever heard of the term the sophomore slump? You probably have. I've seen it be at the very least brought up several times whenever people talk about music, specifically legacy acts. But if you don't know what it is, it's basically when your second album fails to meet the same level of success as your first album. And for this term to apply, I believe it has to be like a big decline from your first record. So, something like, I don't know, Guts by Olivia Rodrigo doesn't really count because even though it wasn't quite the cultural phenomenon that her first album was, it still did really well and had Vampire, which was a massive hit. Also because that album is really good and better than her debut, but that's besides the point. No, when I'm talking about the real sophomore slump in music, I'm talking about the Stone Roses' Second Coming. An album that I don't necessarily hate. Hell, I don't even think this album is bad at all, but it is certainly weird. Hell, even the album cover is weird. Who the fuck is this guy? Compared to the band's debut, this one is the far more forgotten of the two, and the only times that I really see it being brought up is by, well, die-hard Stone Roses fans. It was released in December of 1994 to mixed reviews, and it also will end up being the last album that the band will ever release, as they ended up disbanding in 1996. They did reform in 2011, but no studio album really originated from that. It was mostly just live shows, and well, two singles as well, until they disbanded in 2017. But yeah, this album is certainly an interesting one. As far as follow-ups to the band's most successful album goes, Second Coming is a surprisingly really different album from the self-title. Although, unfortunately for the detriment of this album in this case, let me put it like this. One of my favorite things about the Roses self-title was its very singular identity. It was part of the Manchester scene and the baggy scene in particular, and I did say that the album influenced a lot of music to come, but really, I don't think any album in the world sounds quite like the Stone Roses debut. You had the band experimenting with several psychedelic textures in so many different ways. You had their effortless, brilliant songwriting. You had songs like the last two, yes, I'm counting Full Skulls in here, which had these really inventive solos and passages that I don't even know how to describe really. They have to be listened to be believed, you know. Also, Manny was a fantastic bassist and was absolutely fundamental of some of my favorite moments of their debut too. Like, once again, the last part of I Am the Resurrection, dude's a fucking god. Point is, the Stone Roses self-title kind of felt like its own genre in a way. I mean, you can describe it as a neo-psychedelic jangle pop record, but I don't think that enough cuts it, you know. Second Coming, on the other hand, is purely a blues rock album. Now, I don't have anything against blues rock in particular. I mean, hey, I'm a big Led Zeppelin fan, and you can do plenty of cool things with blues rock. But I don't know, I feel like going from the very unique sound that they had on their self-titled to, well, a standard blues rock sound is kind of a downgrade, honestly. It will be one thing if the Stone Roses did something interesting with this blues rock sound, and to be fair, it does have a few moments where it does try to do something different. Maybe not always for the best, we'll get to that one. But yeah, this just doesn't feel anywhere near as special as their debut feel. I think one of the reasons why they were compelled to do this is because of John Squire. The guy is a really talented guitarist, and well, blues rock does benefit a lot from, well, the guitar. I mean, I'll say, even though they do pure blues rock worship in here, it is at the very least good blues rock worship. There are plenty of cool riffs in here. If you really look into it though, contrary to what I and many people feel about the sound of their debut, Stone Roses actually thought the contrary. They were not satisfied with the sound of their self-title. John Squire in particular described it as twee and not hard enough. I guess they didn't appreciate the masterpiece they made. Fuck you, Stone Roses, you ruined my life. Another prominent issue that I have with the second coming is, well, the length. I think long albums in general are an interesting phenomenon. Some of my all-time favorite albums are long albums. Stuff like Leaves Are Inside You, Dead Consciousness, or Soundtracks for the Blind, for example, are absolutely phenomenal. Yes, I know I look like a guy that uses radio music a lot. But a long album is also something you do have to earn though. You can either end up with a Friends Stay Mute or a Be Here Now. The former uses its length in a creative way to craft these multi-genre epics that feel adventurous, and the latter is a bloated, self-indulgent mess, where the songs are only long because of the band's ego and size at the time. I'm not saying you have to be very experimental like the Mars Volta to pull this off, it's just about knowing how to use the length of your song, you know. And unfortunately, I think Second Coming kind of falls into the latter. Second Coming is over an hour long with 12 songs, and most of the songs feel like they overstayed their welcome, especially the opener. Let's compare it to the opener of the self-title. Both songs have these grand openings, but the difference is that with I Wanna Be Adored, I think it actually feels earned. It's chilling, it's long enough, and it eventually leads into this bombastic riff drop. Absolutely beautiful stuff. Breaking Into Heaven, on the other hand, the intro feels less like a build-up and more like the band just messing around with different nature-like sounds, including this weird high-frequency buzz that kinda sounds like a mosquito trying to pass off as a build-up. It does have some cool drums a little later on for sure, but this excessive 4-minute long intro doesn't hold a candle to the way I Wanna Be Adored opens, including what it leads up to. Unlike the bombastic drop that I Wanna Be Adored throws at you, Breaking Into Heaven's opening just leads into a fairly standard blues rock tune. It just feels like a far more self-indulgent intro that doesn't really serve much of a purpose. I think Breaking Into Heaven is one of the better tracks in general. There are a lot of cool riffs on it, and once the song actually does start, it is actually pretty good. But the problems it has are emblematic of the problems that the album has in general. Almost every song feels too long, and all that extra time is purely just spent to John Squire just showing off. Again, he's a fantastic guitarist, but it does start to get pretty repetitive after a while. Also, I love Ian Brown's vocals and I do enjoy listening to him on the album, but I do think he kind of sounds out of place in here. He sounds like he belongs more to the sound that they crafted on their debut album than he does on here really. And even just beyond that, some of the softer songs on here I think are just kind of boring. Songs like Breaking Into Heaven, Driving South, Good Times, and especially Love Spreads, while purely blues rock, are at least fun to listen to because, you know, the band is actually good at playing their instruments and are good at showing off that skill. Love Spreads particularly, it's actually a pretty catchy tune, probably the best song on here. And also, shout out to that really cool beat for Baking You, that shit goes hard. But you also got some songs like 10-Story Love Song or Your Star Will Shine that just feel pretty uninspired and don't really carry much on them really. It all makes up for a fairly long-winded album that just doesn't manage to be nearly as memorable as their debut. But hey, at least they got to close off with Love Spreads, which like I said before, it's pretty damn good. Well, unless you count whatever this is. This song right here is The Fuzz. It's a 6-minute hidden track that appears 5 minutes after the album has finished, and it's like Bugs by Pearl Jam on steroids. I guess, I don't know. I don't want to be too harsh on this song because, well, it is a hidden track, and I think the thought of someone being jump scared by this is admittedly pretty funny, but I'm also not going to pretend this is a good experimental track or whatever. While I was listening to this album in preparation for this video, I did find it kind of hard to get through this. It's probably intentionally unlistenable, but it's still pretty unlistenable regardless. Remember when I said that the album was weird? This hidden song is the cherry on top. Oh, and after that is just more silence. Cool. Real talk though, I do miss hidden tracks. Yeah, as awful as this song can be, I am kind of glad it exists because I don't know, I find its whole existence to be pretty funny, like, you know, it's the magic of hidden tracks. So yeah, Second Coming is not that great. It is definitely not terrible, and I still like it more than I don't. I'll probably give it like a 6 out of 10. But compared to their self-titled, yeah, it's not even close. And I think that's how a lot of the public in large and the critics felt about the album. I wouldn't say that this is what killed their career. If you look into the behind the scenes of the band, you can pretty much see that they broke up because of label drama and band drama. And yeah, the departure of John Squire towards the end of the band's life before their breakup in the 90s did contribute a lot to why the band broke up. But this is an album that, unlike their 1989 album, didn't really leave much of an impact at all. Music journalist Simon Reynolds said that the Stone Roses became just another band when this album came out, and honestly, I don't think I can blame him for that. But hey, we had worse letdowns in music. Honestly, I'm in the belief that the Gallaghers were actually inspired by the self-indulgence of the Second Coming, considering that Be Here Now basically has a lot of the same problems but done worse. But hey, that's just a thought. I don't know, I'll definitely talk about Oasis at some point in this channel. Stay tuned for that. And thank you for watching this video. I'll see you in the next video.